Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Today we'll just go with personalities and perspectives. I guess we'll have to listen to a few more speeches between now and January 20th, so we'll have plenty of politics. Take it or like it. Unfortunately, some folks just haven't taken this very well. We're going to talk about politics.
Just say, excuse me, I digress.
Yes, excuse me, I digress. Okay. Well, I start kudo with a viewpoint with a kudo or two. This morning, Mrs. Busby, you may have one, or you may jump right in there anytime you wish. I think I just recognized the Lincoln Area Music Society put on a nice concert last weekend, last Saturday night and Sunday at the Lincoln Community High School auditorium, which is a very nice place for that concert. And as usual, they knocked it out of the park and did a great job. All these folks, they spend a lot of time rehearsing, getting ready for this, giving of their own time for this to present the entertainment for the community, and so it's well received and well respected, and we thank them very much for that. So that's my kudo.
Well, I'd like to second that kudo.
Well, wait a minute. We haven't had a motion yet.
Okay, well, I'll do the whole thing then. But if you've got Julie Casa and Tim Searby, you can't go too far wrong.
No.
The orchestra was wonderful, and the choir was to die for. And they do the chorus from Handel's Messiah, which absolutely...
Was that Jake Handel?
Huh?
Was that Jake Handel?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
That's absolutely the most stirring thing.
Those two are unique directors, are very, very good. But the thing about our Music Society, and the same thing is for the folks who want to give the concert down at Latham Park, they don't just get up there and perform. There's a little rehearsal that goes on to that, so they dedicate a considerable amount of time. So,
yes.
Great for them. Now, I heard Christmas is coming. I heard that way back about August the 31st in some of the stores. So with that in mind, would you like to introduce our guest this morning?
I sure would. We're going to talk this morning with Adam Quine from First Presbyterian Church and Father Mark Evans, from the Episcopal Church right down the street from the Presbyterians.
Well, we have lots of room for you if you want to come, folks. If not, standing room only.
And we're going to talk about Christmas. We get so busy and wrapped up in the cards and the Christmas letter and the shopping and the baking and the decorating and the wrapping and all the things, and we don't stop to think that not everybody looks forward to Christmas or is able to enjoy it. Well, the cat is being fickle today. We're a small-time operation. I have two jobs.
The cat wanted to go out the door of the studio, and then the cat decided it wasn't going to go out. So.
We have that taken care of. So we're going to talk about Christmas for a large part of the population who don't greet Christmas with joy and anticipation. Because they've lost someone, because they've had tragedy in their lives of one sort or another. And I'm sure that for the both of you gentlemen, that's something that you have to deal with on an annual basis. And I know at the Presbyterian Church, we're going to be having a Blue Christmas a week from tonight. Now, that's got nothing to do with Elvis, right, Adam?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe you could open up by telling us Blue Christmas.
Sure. Blue Christmas. There are many names that it kind of goes by, and Blue Christmas is one to hold up how sometimes the holiday season, as you mentioned, Judy, can be difficult for many, and that it can leave us feeling blue, a little sad, tender. And some of us have feelings of depression around this time of the year, with the days growing shorter and the nights growing longer. And that's essentially where the service comes from. It's held on December 21st, traditionally, which is the longest night of the year, right? And it's a service that gives space for people to sit in and enter deeper into the grief and the sorrow they may feel around the Christmas season. I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, it was the first Christmas that we celebrated without my mom's dad. And I remember during the singing of Silent Night, Holy Night, and we had the candlelight service, I remember looking at, playing with the wax like most kids do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And being excited about going to my grandparents' place afterwards and getting all the presents. Right? And
Oh, sure.
looking to my mom and seeing her kind of upset and sad. And that's when I first remembered that the holiday season is not always warm and bubbly.
Well, it's there's an element of that in everyone's life, I think, insofar as, of course, my grandparent, I'm 77, so needless to say, my grandparents have been gone for a while. But I remember so vividly and so fondly Christmases with them. And every Christmas, I still have a pretty good size, actually, twinge thinking about grandmas and the grandpas and the aunts and the uncles, So there's an element to a lesser degree, certainly, than for some.
Well,
for all of us.
Long ago, oh my. 93 it had to be. I was probably about 8 or 9 or 10, and my father took me aside where our Christmas was sufficient. Let's just use that word, is sufficient. And he took me aside to remind me that there were a lot of people who weren't as lucky as I was. A father-son conversation. Now that stuck with me all these many, many years. He wanted to make sure that I understood how damn lucky I was. This is exactly what he was telling me in plain words. And he made it a point. And he took me in the car with him when he took a couple of turkeys around to a house that he knew about. And he made sure I knew what he was doing.
Yeah, well, I think that's wise of your dad. I think it's good for the young people to learn about giving at Christmas as well as receiving at Christmas, which of course they seem to be quite, I don't know, it's an inborn thing.
Well,
they're up for the receiving right off.
That's inculcated in us when those families who
because you keep
lucky.
Asking the little ankle biters, what's Santa going to bring you?
Right.
I mean, Liam is 3. I'm sure he thinks Santa's going to bring him the world with a pink ribbon around
What
it.
did the president-elect want?
Well, actually, it's a very fitting message to what we're talking about this morning.
Yes.
I just got a call to go out and give last rites.
Oh dear.
Yeah, very interesting. And now we talk about Blue Christmas here.
So sorry if I
well,
No.
It worked out
Thank
fine.
goodness you
But I was
went.
just going to have a little fun with it. I thought that Donald would ask you to do something in the way of hoping and getting.
No, that's why I stepped out, because I feared this call was coming. So
now, Father, seriously, if you have to leave to go do that, you feel comfortable to do that. If you would like to, we can get along with Adam and we'll get him back. But if the time is of a significant problem to you.
Well, except I came in your car.
Well,
Well, you'd have to leave in our car then.
Here are your car keys, you come back. Matter of fact, hello, Tessie. All right, let's get back to this Blue Christmas thing, Adam.
This is just, it seems
Tell
such
us
an awful time
how
to lose someone.
how this works.
So the way we have it, the service that we have, it's centered on, it's a play on darkness and light. And the Christmas season is about darkness and light. If you look at the biblical story, the light of Christ, the birth of the child, people who walked in a darkness has now seen a light. And so our Blue Christmas service incorporates darkness, the lighting of the Advent candles, scripture, and also carols that are sung that kind of help us enter into the season, the sorrow and the grief a little deeper. So, I mean, and this is a good example of the church being a space to provide pastoral care, to those in our congregations who find themselves lonely, right, in this time of the year.
That's right.
Those who don't have the families, they don't have the traditions they once have. And so for us to be able to come alongside them and say, we'll sit with you, offer them our presence, which is what the world needs more than anything right now. It's not more stuff, but the presence and time
yes,
for one another. And that's what the service is about, ultimately.
This would be for anybody who in a state of bereavement, be it critical or just a matter of a memory that they want to work with. And it's for anybody that is in that status.
Absolutely.
That have a little bereavement for one reason or another.
You're right. It's not, and it's not a service to make people sad, right? It's not a Debbie Downer type service, but there's a lot of different types of loss. It's not just the loss of a loved one. It's a loss of a family if you've gone through a divorce. It's the loss of a family tradition of, let's say, one of your loved ones is serving overseas, right? And you don't have them home for your typical Christmas celebrations.
You made a point, though. I think a very good point, in that we kind of immediately think that it's a matter of a death in the family, and it's not that at all. That's a part of the picture.
Exactly.
And it seems, too, in this day and age, there are an awful lot of family estrangements, and for all intents and purposes, the one who has withdrawn from the family may as well be overseas as far as the rest are concerned, because you don't get to see them. One would hope that at Christmas time there'd be healings, but that's not always the case.
Exactly.
And that seems to be a more and more common thread. Do you see that in your practices, both of you?
I don't know if it's more common or not. I think, one of the joys that Adam and I see being in ministry is that we get invited into people's lives when they're at the very low points and at the very high points. And so there are things that are made manifest to us that most other people don't get to see.
Well, we have some high points. And one of the high points of Viewpoint is we have some great sponsors. And we're going to recognize that right now. We're going to try to get our act together, and we'll talk with Father Mark and see if we can speed things up for him. Go right ahead, Jim. And we're right back live in the studios here. The program is Viewpoint, of course, each Wednesday morning at 8:15 at 96.3, as you already know, since you have us dialed in. Our guest this morning, the both of you, yes. Judy, let's see. Well, we'll just go right back to Father Mark and Adam Quine. We're talking about this holiday season, but we really need to talk about it as a Christmas season. There's been a great hue and cry. I don't know what it was. Some PC police or somewhere along the line drank some bad coffee or got a bad drink of some kind years back, and they started, you can't talk about Christmas. You have to use a holiday word. Well, that's just a bunch of BS. So each year, the ministers and the priests in the community, they have an extra workload. It's concomitant with the arrival of Christmas and the arrival of Easter, two big holidays in our church, and two big workload days for the ministers. So how does that impact you, Mark, in the Episcopal Church, your workload and so forth? There's a question right off the hill for you.
Yeah, so we have two penitential seasons that lead up to Christmas and Easter. We have Advent leading to Christmas and Lent leading to Easter. And so the church consciously makes an effort to quiet things for a season beforehand. And unfortunately, the rest of the world doesn't see it that way. It's time to gear up and get rolling. As you mentioned before, you started hearing about Christmas in August. So the church consciously tries to keep things quieter, to declutter lives rather than clutter the lives. And but given what's going on in the rest of the world, obviously things are happening. So for our faith, our denomination, we have extra services for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, that sort of thing. So there's a little added thing there, but it's not to the same extent as Easter would be. In our tradition, it's not just Easter Sunday. It starts with Maundy Thursday. And so we have an almost 72-hour church service. Now, sometimes we're present for this in the church, and sometimes they're not present, but it's still a service all the way through. So in that season, there is a huge amount of prep work and a huge amount of being present. So, thankfully, Christmas for me as a priest in the Episcopal Church is not that onerous of a deal.
Well, that's the Episcopalian take. Now, Adam, in the Presbyterian Church, is your workload bigger at the Christmas season or at the Easter season, sir?
It can be. It has been before. But like Mark, the highlight of our faith is the resurrection, right? So Easter season is where we spend a lot of our energy. However, as a pastor in our denomination, along with many, we really want to emphasize Advent. So when people get into a fuss about Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays or whatever, I always answer and just to be a bit sarcastic and whatnot, but well, it's Advent, so happy Advent, right? So
and they don't know what that means.
They don't know what that means, right? And people are worried about Christmas trees and Christmas decorations, and the first thing I do is put an Advent wreath in my house, right, where I have the candles set up, and I do Advent services, and I do Advent prep before Christmas, because Christmas is only 12 days long, the 25th, and then those additional 12 days, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to see the church, and what I like to do as a pastor is help the people who worship with me reclaim the season of Advent as a season of preparing and waiting and hoping and rejoicing that Christmas is coming. So,
this is the first year I can remember in an ever so long time that I haven't thoroughly expected to have the big MI, because I worry all day and all night about, now I mustn't forget I have to do this, and I mustn't forget that, and I mustn't forget this. And you get yourself all head up. And I haven't felt that way this year, and I think part of it might be coming out of yourself. At our church, we had all the Head Start kids from the whole town come, and the people had brought things that would be appropriate gifts for the children to pick for their mom and their dad and their grandma and their brother and their sister, and then we'd wrap them for them. Well, these kids are preschoolers. I mean, they're little people, little bitty ankle biters, and they'd shop for everybody, and we'd wrap, and nobody got seriously injured. It was quite a success. And then there's always the Salvation Army. I'm a big believer in the Salvation Army and garnering funds for them. They get more bang for the buck than most.
To the point where she'll stand out there and ring in the cold.
But
for which she was rewarded last week.
Yeah, yes, I was.
Did you? Mark doesn't know about that, and perhaps Adam doesn't. Tell the audience, both of them, and Mark and Adam, what happened for you. I thought that was really.
I was ringing the bell, and a young man came by to go into Kroger to do his thing, and had a big smile. He was a cute kid, early 20s. And I thought to myself, wrongly, wow, why do they, cute kid like that, why does he dye his hair that color? And then I went on ringing and he went on shopping, and pretty soon here he came and he handed me a bouquet and he said, I bought this for you because you're ringing the bell for the Salvation Army.
Oh, it wasn't. I thought that. By the way, that was no. It was a pretty decent bouquet.
Yeah.
He spent a couple of bucks on that, which I thought it really got to me.
It
She was judging the book by its cover, as we all, each and every one of us do. I see these kids go down the street with their hair looking like that, and I said, well, gee, what's that about, you know? And maybe say other cryptic remarks that I can't repeat. And hear these things. So it's not what was up here, it was what was inside that hair.
That's right. That's right. And let it be a lesson to all of us, me especially. But I said to the kid, I said, would you care if I kissed you on the cheek? And he allowed us how that'd be okay, so I did. I thought it was appropriate, don't you think? Yeah. So anyway, that was a beautiful thing. But I think it helps if you can get outside yourself a little, too. Maybe I'm crazy.
And if I could interject something, I mean, that's one of the positive things about the Christmas season, even as commercial as it becomes, is the types of things you just mentioned happen more frequently, I think, in the Christmas season.
Yes.
So there is, you know, it's not woe is the world necessarily. There are some things that happen even in this, what we want to call the quiet time of Christmas, or the quiet time of Advent, excuse me. But good things do bubble up in people in this season.
And be aware of that as a fact, because if you look for those things and are aware of them, it'll make life better for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact that Christmas seems to, and Easter, the two seasons of the world that seem to turn out more, quote, worshipers, unquote, it speaks to this, the very thing that we just mentioned here, Judy. I know that it's the thing to do, and we should do it, and we're better people for it if we go to church on a regular basis. Having said that, we all, each of us know, all five of us here in the studio know people who hardly darken the door of the church at any time, but are really, in their living, solid Christian people in the way they react with their fellow, the townspeople and those with whom they associate. And on the contrary, on the same side, I know of a guy who went to church every Sunday and made a production out of being there. And he was one of the biggest crooks in town. So, and that was established fact.
Well, now we're back to books by the cover, aren't we?
There we go. So that's exactly right. Adam, have you had any unusual experiences since you've been in town?
Unusual experience. Names
changed to protect the innocent.
I'm sure I have. Lincoln is an interesting little place with...
There's a comment.
With a lot of...
Very judiciously stated.
Yeah, a lot of characters that make up this township, but nothing too interesting. It's a lovely people. They're good folk here, and as one guy in my church said, we're good eggs here in Lincoln. I think we need to be reminded, though, kind of what you're talking about, of not judging a book by the cover, and I really believe that the season that we're about to enter into as we celebrate the Incarnation is that the church has a call, and that is to take care of one another regardless of our creeds and our denominational affiliations and what we look like and what we believe. And you know, as good as the church can be and has been, it's also been harmful, and it's also been hurtful to some folks. And so this is why I really enjoy the season of Incarnation, the season of preparing for Christ, and this idea of God's reign, of God's kingdom is it's welcoming of all the characters, you know, all of the the people who make up such a diverse community.
I was telling you in the car that last night my daughters and I had gone with the people from Faith Lutheran up to Bloomington to see Away in a Basement. It's a production about the church basement ladies, and it is hysterically funny. And they were having the Christmas time and filling the tins with cookies for the shut-ins and so forth, and all the things that you do at a church. And they got in a brouhaha over a new lady in church who had wanted to introduce animals into the nativity scene, which they thought was heresy. It's basically about the Norwegian Lutherans up north. Mark, you've run across them from time to time.
I used to be a Norwegian Lutheran.
See? Well, then you know how they operate. Yeah, that's what I was, too.
And he's come to this now.
Yeah, and it's finally come to this.
My mother's maiden name is Updahl. If that gives
well,
you
that's
an indication.
A clue. Okay. That's a clue. Very much a clue. Yeah, and they were talking about the lutefisk and the lefse and all the things and bringing...
Krumkaka? Kringla?
Yes, they talked about Krumkaka.
Are they allowed to use that word over here?
And they'd had a failure in their batch. It was kind of rubbery. I've never heard.
Say it again?
They had a failure in their batch of Krumkaka. It was rubbery.
Oh, really?
Bendable, which Krumkaka's not.
No.
No way.
You understand what they're talking about, don't you, Adam?
It's all Hebrew to me.
But you know, that does come to pass. There are things that are traditions in our churches, and if you mess with them, it's at your peril. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think that happens everywhere. I mean, the Masons are the same way, or the JCs and so on.
Sure.
Anytime we create organizations, we have boundaries that are not to be crossed, but after a while, the boundaries maybe shouldn't be as big a deal as they become.
I think that says a whole lot right there. That may sum up the whole morning. Boundaries are not as big a deal as yeah, exactly correct. Yeah.
So to Adam's point that we're to care for everyone, misfits and outliers, and the Old Testament uses the term aliens and sojourners many times. That's one of God's rules. You'll care for the alien and the sojourner, the person who doesn't quite belong but is part of your community. And in many of our churches, maybe not in the Presbyterian church because it's a different shape, but our church is rectangular. And if you look up above, it looks like the bottom of a boat. And we even call the place where the people sit the nave, from which we get the Latin word from which we get the term navy. Oh. So the church...
Not too old to learn something.
The church is...
From your mouth to God's ear, please.
The church is Noah's Ark. We take all the animals and we save them.
Now there's an analogy that's very interesting. Here I am, 93 years, been in the church for 80-some. I never had that analogy till this very morning.
So the flood is coming. The bad stuff, the evil things, the things that kill us are coming. Let's get in the ark and let's be safe.
Well, Adam, it's not too late for you if you want to come join us.
Well, that'd be nice.
It's not too late for y'all.
Heck. Good grief. Now, not to touch on the political, but as to the aforementioned admonition about taking in the sojourner and the alien, and that makes perfect sense on one level. However, right now, we're kind of having an issue with taking in the sojourner and the alien, insofar as there are people living in Eastern Europe who we can't imagine how they
exist.
How they exist. Thank you.
How they're going to live.
And many of them don't exist for very long. And to take in the sojourner and the alien would be proper. But on the other hand, how in the world do we reconcile ourselves with the admonitions that are very, very tried and true in today's world?
Tried and true how?
In that if you lived in the Middle East in the days of Christ, you wouldn't, I don't think, be as concerned about taking in somebody who was the sojourner or the alien as today you could get a terrorist.
Well, we're getting into deep field there. That water's mined heavily.
So, as we've become more globalized, the world has shrunk. You know, we can now be almost any place on the earth in a matter of hours. Mm-hmm. So your point about taking the sojourner and the alien in the days of Christ has some merit, because you only travel by animal or by foot. Mm-hmm. You know, we didn't have the high-speed travel they didn't have the high-speed travel. So,
heck, we didn't even know that part of the world was here. Most of the world.
But that doesn't negate the concept of being welcoming to the stranger. Now, it's also biblical to protect yourself. So if there are things that are harming the community, that is it is biblically correct or okay to protect your community from harm. Mm-hmm. So that's what you have to balance. But it doesn't negate being hospitable to the person who is worthy of hospitality. And getting back to the earlier comment about judging books by covers, we can't always decide beforehand who is worthy and who isn't. We have to actually make the act of hospitality happen before we find out if that person is worth the hospitality.
And the sad fact is sometimes that's a bad decision.
But it's a biblical decision to make. So, yes, sometimes it ends up being harmful, but other times
it's rewarding.
It's rewarding. So we have to balance, you know, justice and peace are the flip sides of the same coin. So peace is not just the absence of fight. Right. Peace is something more than that. Justice is not just making rules. Justice is making things right. Peace and justice fit together more like interlocking tabs than they are opposites. If that makes sense at all.
Well
I think it makes sense to Adam. He's sitting there taking notes. He's got next Sunday's sermons.
Oh, he already thought of this stuff a while back.
Well, you know, I alluded earlier to the terrible commercialism of Christmas. I just saw yesterday a thing I commended to you. Go on YouTube, find Dennis Prague, pretty pragmatic kind of a guy, and he talks about the commercialism of Christmas and the fact that we go about saying happy holidays, and that those two words are an anathema to him. It's Merry Christmas. And he said that you might find that strange coming from me as I'm Jew, but he extolled the virtues of doesn't away with this political correctness addressing of the holiday season. If it's Christmas, it's Merry Christmas, and I'd like to leave that as the watchword for people as they go about their business on the streets on a daily basis, to use the two simple words, Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays. I think my priest will second that motion, even though it wasn't properly made. So now we're about to have a few days to go for 10 days. This is the 15th, isn't it? And
14th.
14th. Okay. Well, all
Well,
right, so-
Christmas Eve is the 24th.
All right, Christmas 10 days for the 24th. So
I think we should ask them too, in this couple of minutes we've got left, maybe they could both tell us their schedules at church, because neither church is there strictly for the people who've signed on the dotted line to be a member of that church. They're there for the greater community. And there may be people who don't have a church home who would like to celebrate Christmas in the church. So do you think you could do that for us, please, and thank you?
Sure. The Episcopal Church is located at 402 Pekin in Lincoln. And on Christmas Eve at 8 o'clock, we will have our Christmas Eve service, which is carols and Holy Communion, the Eucharist, as some people call it. So that'll be 8 o'clock. And then on Christmas Day, Sunday, we'll have another service at 9:45 a.m.
And at First Presbyterian Church, we're located at 301 Pekin Street, so just down the street, as Mark mentioned earlier, from
we meet
Episcopalians.
midway with swords.
Yeah. Yeah. We have our Blue Christmas service next Wednesday, the 21st. A free supper will be served at 6 p.m., and then the service begins at 7 p.m. And then we also have a Christmas Eve service at 7 p.m. with communion. And I guess if they wanted to come to my church, then they could go to your service at 8.
Yeah.
And just have church all night long. And then we will have a
doubleheader.
We will have a Christmas morning service on the 25th at 10 a.m. But also, I forgot that this Sunday, our choir cantata, led by the talented musician Judy Queso, will take place at our church at 10 a.m. this Sunday, and it'll be a joyful celebration. So.
You should come, Bill. Sid sings in the choir.
They've got Presbyterians in? I could go with you, too.
You know, one of the memories I cherish the most is when I was a kid, they had the Christmas Eve service in Kenyon, Minnesota at 11 at night. And boy, the snow would crunch and the moon would shine, and it was just so beautiful.
Norman Rockwell stuff.
It was Norman Rockwell stuff. That was what it was.
I had someone voice a complaint that, oh, you're getting the service at 8 o'clock? Could it be earlier? And my wife turned to the person and said, be quiet. If it was up to him, he'd do it at 11.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, our guest this morning, kind of an ad hoc morning, talking about the Christmas season, not the Yuletide season, not the happy holiday season, the Merry Christmas season, the birth of Jesus Christ. And if there's no other reason to think about that's enough right there. We appreciate Adam Quine of First Presbyterian Church and Father Mark Evans of the Episcopal Church here in Lincoln spending your time with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
We really always appreciate you two coming up with us. And we always try to close with a comment that I picked up somewhere. I found Dave Barry, somewhat of a humorous guy. Once again, we come to the holiday season, a deeply religious time that each of us observes in his own way by going to the mall of his choice. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.